Hi everyone, good afternoon. I am Narendra Nimala and I have with me Madhukar Hiragange. We would be discussing on the issues being faced by taxpayers with respect to refund claims. We often come across taxpayers who are facing a lot of issues when the refund applications are being filed. So we thought we could make a short video discussing the issues being faced and possible solutions that can be addressed, right? Before we discuss the issues, I'll hand it over to Madhukar sir, who would set us a background on the importance of refunds and also give us certain bureaucratic issues that are being faced. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Narendra. Good afternoon, everybody, especially the exporters to whom this particular video will be focused towards. You could take the next slide, Narendra. The philosophy of exports is that our goods and services from India need to be competitive. If you look at this pandemic period, you look at the industries which are doing well. The exports are doing extremely well, whether it is in garments, whether it is in software, whether it has to do with services which are getting exported. Engineering goods. We also are lucky to have the youngest population of the world. Our average age in India is 28 and nearest to us maybe somewhere around 40s. Therefore, the future of India is very sure. In 10 years' time, Indians will be richer than the Germans. Of course, Europe is a poor comparison since it's a land of the old people who may not be able to contribute. They can only take, not give. In such a wonderful scenario, India should take a proactive effort to see that at least the taxes do not stick. Every tax should be reimbursed in full. If I look at the breakup of this into various figures as well as measures, one is seamless credit. That means whatever tax is paid should be reimbursed to the exporter. You have 20 to 40% of the taxes, almost 4 lakh crores of taxes in India are only on petroleum products. Then you have electricity, which is not taxable, and therefore all the inputs which go into the power sector, into the electricity companies, does not get passed on. Land has become quite expensive in India. The stamp duty for commercial property also is not ratable. Added to this, we have restrictions on eligibility, saying that if you have any personal expenditure for the staff are required to produce, staff are required to provide the service, but there are restrictions put on this. Buildings you cannot get credit, motor vehicles you can't get credit. All these are used for business. Then why we are restricting them? Added to this, you have procedural conditions. You can't take credit if it doesn't come in your 2A. You cannot take credit beyond a particular period. These are all rights. A credit, ITC is a right. Then why are you unnecessarily stopping? All these restrictions also get embedded in cost and reduce the credit. On the whole, from services to goods, I would say Indian services and goods are about 5 to 10% costlier than our neighbors. And they may be small countries like Thailand, Bangladesh, and they are the people who are competing with us in the garment sector, in any sector where cost of labor is involved. GST was supposed to ensure that the refunds are automatic and fast. That means you should get it immediately. In India, maybe around 80%, we don't have a problem. GST is coming automatically and within a month. I don't know whether we can say, as per conditions in the world, it's all 2 days, 3 days. But for us, 30 days is also okay. We have seen large number of restrictions being inserted by the bureaucracy. This bureaucracy somehow does not want India to do well. They are only bothered about their rules. And the finance minister also toes their line by mouthing what the bureaucrats say. Somewhere down the line, you have the judiciary, which has some reason. They try to bring reason to the law. But the bureaucracy ensures that every decision goes to the apex court, where it would take 5 to 10 years in the minimum. So again, you don't get justice fast. Justice delayed is justice denied. And in India, 10 years is almost a lifetime. We have had GST coming in to see that corruption is removed. You know, there is this cost of corruption in India for businesses is around 4 lakh crores. These are, of course, I have no real figure, but 30 years in practice, I think I should be able to give some guesstimate. We will go back. The Narendra, you might have to go back. Yes. Cost of graft is terrible. And there is also, exporters find this other problem, that they have tax credits in their books. There is no use. It's a paper figure. It has no impact. It doesn't help them to become competitive. Remember that our infrastructure is still poor, though we are producing 1 kilometer every 15 minutes or something like that of roads. That doesn't mean everything is okay. Power shutdowns are there, breaks are there. We'll have to put a generator. We have to put alternative electricity. Transportation is very slow because our highways cannot take the large trucks. This is supposed to be taken care through the foreign trade policy, where WTO, which is loaded in favor of the developed countries, tells us what we can take and what we cannot take. Unfortunately, we are bound by that. And therefore, there also we become a little less competitive. Next slide, please. So the bureaucratic barriers which are there, other than the, what I could say policy matters, is that many times we have satisfaction of officer concern. SEZ is supposed to be something where these bureaucrats should not be able to reach. But now they have made a corruption out of invoices certification. Every invoice certification, we will charge you 500 rupees off the record. Why we are getting into this, I cannot make out. There are so many ways in which we can eradicate this. The advisors to the policymakers, the finance minister, are largely the department. And these type of issues which are brought up by the trade and industry are sacrificed to reach targets. The focus is on errant fraudsters. How many errant fraudsters are there? The CAG has 20 years of record, which says that 15% of the show cause notices issued result in a demand. So what are you doing? 85% unfairly frivolous notices are being put, and whatever rule you make for the fraudster applies to the tax compliant. Why don't you catch the fraudster? Why don't you stop the connivance of the politicians with the mafia, with the errant departmental officers? Now they have put a condition of receipt in convertible foreign exchange for goods also. As far as the law is concerned, our understanding is that it's illegal. And therefore, if you have such demands, I think you should challenge it. They have also put place of supply. As long as I am getting dollars, why are you bothered? Make it an export. No, you want to put artificial barricades. You want to go against the international practices. In Australia, if I supply services to an exporter in Australia, I am liable if I am doing intermediary service. That is, I am doing sales, promotion, etc. Whereas in Australia, they pay the reverse charge. So there's a double taxation, and the neutrality of tax, which is a best international practice, has been kept in abeyance from 2014 till now. I understand that there is a relook at this, but I don't know when it will happen. Time restrictions for various types of errors which happen. I apply, a deficiency memo is issued where there is no deficiency. Then I am asked to apply again, and then I am told you are outside the time limit. Again, I have to litigate and come back. The portal itself is not robust. You have seen that every time the portal says we are coming up with a change, we know that it's going to be another nightmare for the compliance of companies. For the same PAN outside India, if they provide any services to the Indian branch, I pay RCM, that is reverse charge liability. But if I provide any services or goods to them, then, when I provide any services to them, then I am made taxable. Why are you having two types of methods? Reasons for not automating, several, most of them given by bureaucrats. We know throughout the world, wherever they want, government is also in India automated. When they can automate to such extent, why export benefits are not totally automated? Efforts to limit IGST refund. Why is this? Why do you think they want you to go in the LUT way? Because in the IGST refund, you don't require an officer. Only 1% there can be an issue. Whereas in LUT, there can be 100 issues. There is a settled principle of law that you don't have to have one-to-one nexus. But departmental officers today also, they want one-to-one nexus. If you have exported this, show me where this invoice used for this export in this period. How does it matter? If I might have used this service or goods for the earlier export or the later export, how does it matter? The internal instructions which are issued by the department are always against the philosophy. For this, the industry, the exporters should make a noise. In India, without making noise, you will not get relief. To understand the nitty-gritties of the difficulties for exporters and possible solutions, I'll ask Narendra to take over, and he will also take your questions in the end. Thank you very much. Narendra. Not audible.
Thank you, Madhukar sir, for providing your insights on the need for eliminating the bureaucratic barriers given the development that we are expecting in the next 10 years in India. With that background, let us look at some of the issues that are being faced by the exporters with respect to refund claims that are being filed. And before we go on to the issues, let us first understand the provisions which enable the refund claims for the exporters. Section 16 of the IGST Act provides two mechanisms for claiming refunds. First one is make the exports without payment of GST under LUT and claim refund of the accumulated input tax credit. The second option that is given is make the exports with payment of GST and claim refund of the GST that is being paid. Of course, this provision existed prior to the amendment made by Finance Act 2021, which is effective March 2021. Prior to that, there were two options given. However, an amendment was made in Finance Act 2021, wherein the taxpayers are allowed to claim refunds under only one option, that is claim refund of the accumulated ITC by making exports without payment of GST. Making payment of GST on exports has been restricted, and only the specified suppliers and only the specified goods or services are allowed to be made with payment of GST and claim refund of the GST paid. The enabling provisions for refund are provided under Section 54 of the CGST Act, and the refund claims need to be filed within 2 years from the relevant date. The relevant date has been prescribed as the date on which the ship or the aircraft leaves India, or the date of receipt of convertible foreign currency, or the date of payment of taxes. Various dates have been prescribed for various scenarios under Section 54 of CGST Act. To carry out the provisions of Section 54, subordinate provisions have been prescribed. That is, Rules 89 to 97A have been prescribed to carry out the provisions of Section 54 of CGST Act. At this point, it is important to note that the rules are only subordinate to the Act, the provisions given in the Act. The rules cannot override what has been already provided in the Act. The additional conditions and restrictions cannot be placed by way of rules. The rules can only carry forward what has been already provided in the Act. With this background, let us move ahead to understand the key issues that are being faced. The first issue that comes to mind is the refund of capital goods. Even under the erstwhile regime, the Senvat credit of capital goods has always been restricted. Even under the GST regime, under Rule 89 of the CGST rules, exporters are not allowed to claim refund of the accumulated ITC in case they are going for an option of export of goods without payment of GST and claiming the refund of the accumulated ITC. In such cases, the formula prescribed for net ITC excludes the ITC on capital goods. Hence, the Rule 89 prescribes an additional condition for claiming the refund of capital goods. At this juncture, it is important to note that while this rule restricts ITC on capital goods, there is no such restriction that has been provided under Section 54 of the CGST rules, under 54 of CGST Act. It has been a settled position that the rules cannot override the provisions of the Act. Bimal Chandra Banerjee is an important landmark decision wherein it was held that the subordinate legislations cannot override the provisions of the Act. Keeping that in mind, in case there are any taxpayers who are facing issues of accumulated ITC on account of capital goods, specifically the capital intensive industries such as automobile industry or a steel production industry, these industries can look at challenging the Rule 89 altogether and getting a relief at the High Court. While the rule can be challenged, the taxpayers often relied on Section 16 of the IGST Act, wherein there was one more mechanism prescribed for refunds. That is to export the goods with payment of IGST and claim refund of the IGST paid. Under this mechanism, there is no specific restriction that has been prescribed till date on claiming refund of the ITC on capital goods. However, it is important to note that this provision has been amended now, like we discussed in the previous slide. Making payment of IGST on exports has been restricted now, and only on the specified suppliers and by the specified suppliers, IGST is allowed to be paid on exports. Having said this, Rule 9610 of the CGST rules places an additional restriction on making payment of IGST on exports. The specified taxpayers, such as EOU units, STPI units, or taxpayers who have availed the benefits of advance authorization or a EPCG scheme, these taxpayers avail the BCD and IGST exemption when the goods are being imported into India, which are of course used for the purpose of exports. These taxpayers are not allowed to make payment of IGST on exports and claim refund of the IGST paid. This rule is against the Constitution of India. Article 14 of the Constitution of India provides equality before law. The taxpayers, the normal taxpayers who are making exports were allowed to make IGST payment on exports, whereas the specified suppliers who are specifically dedicated for exporting the goods or services, those taxpayers were discriminated and were not allowed to make payment of IGST and claim refund of the IGST paid. Having realized this error, an amendment was made in Rule 9610, wherein the amended provision said that in case at the time of import only BCD exemption is availed and IGST exemption is not availed, then the taxpayers will be allowed to make payment of IGST on exports. While this amendment was made, there was no practical means to implement this amendment. The IceGate portal does not allow the taxpayers to file the bill of entries merely by claiming the exemption of BCD. The taxpayers ought to avail the BCD exemption as well as IGST exemption. Therefore, there was an amendment made in 9610. There was no practical means to implement such an amendment made in the rules. On an overall picture, if you look at it, the refund of capital goods has always been restricted, and it is important that policymakers relook at the purpose for which the capital goods are being restricted. The industries which are capital intensive, like we discussed, the automobile industry or a telecom industry or a transportation industry, who are mainly dependent on capital goods for running their businesses, are suffering because the ITC on capital goods has been restricted. It is important that policymakers relook at these provisions and come out with the relaxations which are crucial for capital incentive industries. Let us move ahead to the next issue in hand, that is endorsement of invoices. Endorsement of invoices is mainly a concern for suppliers who are making supplies to SEZ units. Rule 89 of the CGST rules prescribes that while claiming the refund for supplies made to SEZs, the suppliers are required to get the invoices endorsed from the specified officers. An endorsement is a mere acknowledgement by the specified officer that the goods have been received in full into the SEZ unit. So Rule 89 prescribes such a requirement of getting the invoices endorsed. However, the suppliers who are making those supplies to SEZ units are often suffering from the delays being caused by the officers in providing the endorsed copies of invoices for supply of goods and services. It is not just the officers, even the provisions are designed in such a way which would end up leading to delays. Under the SEZ provisions, 45 days has been prescribed for getting the invoices for goods endorsed. However, no such time limit has been prescribed for services, which has been leading to delays as far as services are being concerned. Moreover, SEZ has introduced a concept called DSPF portal, wherein the SEZ units would upload the invoices of goods and services that have been received onto the DSPF portal, and these would be made available to the specified officers online. And once the officer accepts the invoices, which is equivalent to endorsement, the acknowledgement would directly go to the suppliers who are making those supplies to the SEZ units. Those acknowledgements could have been used as an endorsed copy of invoices to claim the refunds. However, while DSPF portal has been introduced, there are practical challenges in getting the invoices endorsed through the portal. There are time lags between when the invoices are uploaded and when the invoices are endorsed by the officers. Moreover, the suppliers and the SEZ units are facing issues from the specified officers because varied approaches are being adopted by the officers across India. There is no centralized instructions giving instructions to the officers for endorsing the invoices. Some of the specified officers are in fact asking the suppliers and the SEZ units to prescribe various conditions which are not there in the law. Some specified officers ask for LUT number on the invoice. Some ask for IGST amount to be mentioned, although IGST is not being charged. Some officers prescribe that the payment needs to be done before the endorsed copy of invoices are being issued. So this is leading to delays, and in turn leading to delays of refunds, which is affecting the cash flows of the taxpayers, specifically those who are supplying goods or services to the SEZ units. With respect to this endorsement of invoices, we have two key recommendations to be made to the officers and the policy makers. One, the SEZ authorities often come out with instructions wherein the specified services in the instructions are deemed to be authorized, approved services. They are deemed authorized services for the purpose of SEZ units. Those services itself can be looked at for the purpose of granting refunds instead of placing an additional condition of getting the invoices endorsed. That is one recommendation. And the second recommendation is, as we all know, e-invoicing has been introduced for almost all the taxpayers, and the policymakers can look at integrating the e-invoice portal with the SEZ portal, and SEZ officers can accept the invoices basis the auto-populated e-invoices. These are the two recommendations that we are making with respect to the endorsement of invoices. Of course, these recommendations have already been made to the policymakers by way of various industry associations. We are personally involved in getting these representations done through various industry forums. While representations have been made, no relaxations have been provided till date. Now let us look at other miscellaneous issues that are being faced by the taxpayers as far as the refunds are concerned. 90% provisional refund has been a promise when the GST law has been introduced. However, no provisional refunds are being granted within 7 days from the date of acknowledgement to the taxpayers. It is high time that policymakers look at the practical implementation of this provision and come out with instructions providing clarity on implementing the provisional refunds. The second issue that we are going to cover is the restrictions that are being placed on the valuation of goods exported out of India. The restriction is that now there is the valuation for the purpose of claiming refund is restricted to 1.5 times of the value of domestically supplied goods. This is the most irrational condition that has been prescribed till date, because there is no such provision in the CGST Act which prescribes that valuation for the purpose of goods is to be restricted to 1.5 times. In fact, the CGST Act always provides that the value of goods will have to be basis the transaction value. However, by way of this restriction, the exports cannot be claimed to the full extent, and only to the extent of 1.5 times of the domestically valued goods can only be claimed as a refund. And taxpayers who are facing an issue of accumulated ITC specifically because of this provision can look at challenging this provision altogether, because no such condition has been prescribed in the Act as far as valuation is concerned. The next issue is with respect to the documentation in claiming the refunds. The officers and the policymakers can look at simplifying the requirement of uploading the various documents. The rules prescribe that GST 2A data has to be uploaded. It is the data that is available on the GST portal, which can easily be accessed by the officers. Instead of that, the rules still mandate that the taxpayers who are claiming refunds have to upload the data. This particular requirement does not make any sense, and officers should look at relaxing these particular requirements. Given the certifications that are required and the declarations that are required to be made can also be simplified. Some of the officers, in fact, ask for reconciliations with respect to GSTR 3B and GSTR 1A and invoices of goods and services received. Some of the conditions which are not even prescribed in the CGST rules. One additional condition is that the taxpayers are often harassed to get the FIRC copies from the banks for receipt of foreign exchange. While the CGST rules prescribe that FIRC copies are mandatory for refund, the FEMA and RBI regulations have come out with a circular saying that FIRC is not required. The payment advice from the banks is sufficient. In spite of that, in spite of that, the taxpayers are being harassed to get the FIRC copies, and the refunds are often being delayed or restricted wherever FIRCs are not being produced. In such cases, the taxpayers can approach the officers and show the circulars that are issued by FEMA and RBI and get a relief. In case that it's denied by the refund authorities, the taxpayers can go on appeal, and Commissioner Appeals can provide a much needed relief wherever FIRC copies are not available, and payment advice is still available with the taxpayers. There are certain procedural lapses which are leading to delays, such as return filing. In case of export of goods with payment of IGST, some of the taxpayers have disclosed the IGST payment under option 3.1.a in GSTR 3B, which is for domestically supplied goods, whereas they're required to disclose those supplies under 3.1.b. Earlier, there was no clarification that was provided. However, by way of Circular 147, a relaxation has been provided wherein it states that 3.1a, 3.1b, and 3.1c will be combined together for the purpose of exports, and taxpayers who are facing this issue need not worry about the error that has already happened. They can still go ahead and claim the refund based on the circular that has been issued. Some of the taxpayers often forget to renew the LUT or file the LUT for a subsequent financial years. In those cases, Circular 125 can be relied upon, which states that procedural delays or procedure requirements cannot take away what has been provided in the law. The substantive benefits that are provided in the law cannot be taken away merely because a form has not been filed. The Circular 125 gives such a relaxation, and therefore the taxpayers who have not filed LUTs can still go ahead and claim the refunds and rely on the Circular 125. There are also delays that are being caused because some of the officers are unable to view the documents. It is important to have a discussion with the officers in case such issues are being filed. The taxpayers could take the email IDs of the officers and mail over the documents to them, or submit it in hard copy. While this is not an ideal scenario approaching the officers for claiming the refunds, but in case of portal issues, the taxpayers could approach the officers and submit the documents in hard copy. We are often seeing delays with respect to refund claims beyond 60 days. The CGST Act prescribes that refunds need to be claimed within 60 days. And in case there are any delays that are being faced, the taxpayers could write letters to the officers for expediting the refund claims. In case even that doesn't solve an issue, then taxpayers could look at approaching the higher authorities, escalating the matter to the commissioners for claiming the refunds. Moreover, in order to avoid these kind of delays, Section 54 provides for interest payment in case of delays beyond 60 days. However, this interest is still not being paid by the officers to the taxpayers. This is a right that can be claimed by the taxpayers who are filing refund applications. While automatic refunds are not being claimed, as soon as a refund claim is received more than 60 days, it is recommended that the taxpayers approach the officers by way of writing a letter stating that they are eligible for an interest claim and they should be granted the same. It is not a favor that we are asking from the department. It is what is lawfully required to be provided by the department that we are claiming. Further, there are issues with respect to credits not being appearing in GSTR 2A, wherein the refunds are restricted. This has been a legacy issue ever since the GST law has been introduced. A tax registered person cannot be made to comply with provisions which are beyond his control. the taxpayer has already complied with the law by making the payment of the taxes to the supplier. The CGST Act and the rules have been designed in such a way that the taxpayers, instead of running the businesses, ought to run behind the suppliers to make the payment to the government. This is the duty of the department to ensure that the taxes are collected from the supplier and not the recipient. Taxpayers are facing this issue of suppliers not filing the returns on time, and hence refunds are being delayed. Moreover, one more issue with respect to GSTR 2A is that Rule 36(4) of the CGST rules gives a concession of 20% or a 10% or a 5% over the period of time to claim credit in addition to what is appearing in GSTR 2A. Well, the rule was first introduced, an additional 20% could be availed as credit, and then it was 10%, and then it was 5%. While this rule provides for additional credit, the refunds does not consider such rule and restricts refunds only to the extent of credits that are appearing in the GSTR 2A of the taxpayer. The last issue we seek to cover is the issues that are being faced by the taxpayers, wherein some of the taxpayers fall under central jurisdiction and some under state jurisdictions. The authorities under state jurisdictions are, of course, who are from the VAT regime and therefore have challenges in understanding the provisions of GST with respect to services are concerned. Therefore, it is important that the officers are explained the business model in detail so that it provides a clarity to the officer and which would enable in claiming the refunds in a timely manner. Moreover, we have seen that some of the officers are using the deficiency memos as an excuse wherein the taxpayers are lewd to follow the unethical practices, which is not recommended at all. Earlier, the deficiency memos were being issued in order to delay the refunds. However, Rule 90 of the CGST rules has been amended now, wherein even in case a deficiency memo is issued and a fresh application has been filed, it does not lead to denying the refund claims on account of time limit. The earlier refund claim that has been made, the time period from the date of earlier refund claim till the date of the deficiency memo, that period is eliminated from the calculation of relevant date, and therefore this is a much needed relaxation that has been provided, wherein the taxpayers did not fall into the trap of the officers issuing deficiency memos. On an overall level, if you look at it, the whole presentation, we are looking at various issues that are being faced by taxpayers, and the ITC has been accumulated, which is leading to cash delays and which is becoming impossible for the taxpayers to manage their cash flows. It is important that the policymakers step up and have a purposeful conversations with the various stakeholders, the consultants, the taxpayers, the industry bodies. It is important to have discussions with all of the stakeholders in order to understand the ground level issues that are being faced by the taxpayers and come out with the relaxations which would help for the common goal of the country in development of the country. Like Madhukar said, we are looking at a progressive situation in the next 10 years. So it is important that the ground level issues with respect to refunds are addressed for this purpose. That is all from our end. We hope you had a insightful session and the issues that you are facing, some of them at least are addressed by us, and it helps you in claiming the refunds on a timely manner. In case there are any queries with respect to refunds, not just the refunds with respect to exports, even in case of any inverted duty structure, if there are any issues, you can contact us at the email IDs that are displayed on the screen. We are always open to questions. If there are any, you can write to us on the email IDs mentioned there. Thank you all.